Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. I know you guys have been asking me for prison slang, so I have tried to compile a lot of it for you from different sides of the country, different sides of the world, though this is in English. So if you like this kind of stuff, please make sure you subscribe so you're notified next time I post this kind of video, because I broke this into many parts. I'll make sure you have your prison slang dictionary on hand, okay?
I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.
All right, let's start with inmates. So those that are in prison call themselves certain things because they need to. Being in prison is like a whole different language, and again, this is so different between different facilities, different states, different countries even, or different gangs, different backgrounds. Anyway, without going on and on and on there, the term inmate has started to be referred to somebody who is in prison. However, it has since changed to imply that that's a new prisoner. And some people that have been inside for a long time find it derogatory. So the word inmate is typically used to say it's a new prisoner. Now, generically, if you're not sure what to call them, just say the word prisoner. Most will find prisoner as something that isn't an insult. And then we have the word convict. Now, convict is a long-time inmate. Like, this is someone who has the code of prisoners. He's a tough guy. He knows the ropes. He does not lie or mislead other prisoners. He knows how that system works. And yeah, that is a convict. So that's not somebody who just got off the bus and is a new prisoner. He is a convict. So do not confuse convict for an inmate. I've done this once. No. All right, so now we're going to move on to the term affiliated. And affiliated means an actual member of a gang. I don't know if I can say this on YouTube. Should be okay. I'm not revealing any secrets. So if he's a member of a gang, they usually say, oh, he's affiliated. Next, we have brother. I actually wrote these down. I did my homework. So we have brother. And that is an inmate in categories such as a friend. He could be a Christian. He could be a black to a black, anybody of the same racial, ethnic background. So whether it's somebody of the same race, somebody of the same religion, they may refer to each other as a brother. They're actually not related, although that's what we use out here. Next is car. And no, you don't drive this inside a prison. Trust me, there's no traffic circles and driver's licenses inside a prison. So the car means it's a group that one associates with while in prison. Again, that could be referred to as the gang affiliation. Sometimes they refer to it as a certain race group, certain age, certain sexual preference, etc. They'll usually say that he's in the same car. Anyway, carnal, and that is a gang member referring to other members of their gang, and that actually is a Hispanic term that's not typically used by anybody other than the Hispanics. Now we have cliques. If you went to high school, you know cliques. So I think prison's not that different. It's usually a group of people such as a gang. So if an inmate is beat up by a clique, then the group has beat him up. So the clique got him. Another one is dog. And no, they're not all cute and cuddly. Somebody will refer to somebody as a dog, like, hey, he's my dog, because it's their friend or a fellow gang member too. But it's their dog. He's my dog. He's cool. Has the keys. I mean, literally, you got somebody who has the keys. Well, somebody who controls or calls the shots for a group or for that gang has the keys. Because if you know, keys matters. They matter. Now we got race traitor. That's someone who socializes outside of the racial group. So you notice these are a little bit in a pattern because I try to group this. So if they're outside of the race group and they're socializing with some other races or some other gangs, they can be called a race traitor. Prison's very segregated by race. All right, the next one is a rep. And that's a representative who can speak for a gang. They can speak for a dorm. They can speak for other inmates of the same circle, clique, race, etc. Because usually they typically have a representative that will speak on their behalf. And we have a shot caller. And a shot caller is an inmate or a convict or a prisoner, I'm going to use the term inmate here, who represents and speaks for a group within the prison, i.e. the gang. Sometimes could be a dorm or a racial group, but that's the shot caller. So a lot of the times in prison, things run themselves. You got the shot callers that get together and they figure out how to control things. So if a fight's about to break out between one race and another, the shot callers will figure out how to take it down. By the way, administration is aware of that. They actually talk to the shot callers when they need to control things. If you want to know more about that, that could be a whole different video. But there's actually movies. I think there's one called Shot Caller. But anyway, this is a shot caller. So, Tipped Up is an inmate who is affiliated with a gang. He is tipped up. Torpedo. Now, prison gangs are kind of like submarines. That's a little bit of a visual picture for you. They're submarines. So you have the captain, who's the OG. You got the shot caller, who controls things, who runs things, who's in charge of things, who, as we can say, has the keys. And then we have the enforcers. Those are people who do things we don't want to know about. And then we have the torpedoes, and they're the little people that are just rising up. That breaks that down for you, huh? And then finally we have turn, and that is when an inmate becomes unaffiliated with a gang. He leaves the gang, so he turns. They've turned him, or he turned himself. All right, so moving on to other things inmates call themselves, and this is by races, and this is not offensive to anybody. They call themselves that. So chiefs are usually Native Americans. Chinos are usually Asian inmates. ESE is normally what black or white inmates call Hispanics. And Hispanics have also used that term against themselves. Kin is a prisoner who is from Africa. Pesa is somebody from a Latin or Hispanic origin. Whites are Caucasian inmates. And blacks are African American origin. Then we have somebody who's an agitator. And that's an inmate who starts fights with other inmates for enjoyment. Because it's prison, right? We're not judging here. We're just using names and slang. Then we have bank. And that's an inmate with financial assets who may exchange stamps for other money, services, anything like that. Because, you know, in prison, they don't actually have cash or money. They have stamps. Or they have other ways of doing currency. But the inmate who has financial means can be called the bank by his buddies. We have somebody called bug. Just probably not what you picture. So a bug is an inmate who has psychiatric or mental problems. Some inmates might also call him a head case, although that is not said in a nice way. So we have a body bag filler, and that's usually an inmate who is very ill. And now we're going to have a little bit of a theme of medical. So somebody who's broke down is an inmate who can no longer function due to medical problems. Ding. It's an inmate term for other inmate with mental problems. So another way that they can use the word bug actually is not just somebody with psychiatric or mental problems, but also a prison staff member that can't be trusted. So that kind of has both. But we'll get to staff members in a different video. So gotta watch this one first. We have JCAT, and that's somebody with mental issues. They also call them a crazy person. 5150 refers to crazy. That's because 5150 is a form that you fill out in a psychiatric hospital. Moving on from that, we have the brownies, and those are the people who work in a kitchen. We have Bucky, Bunky, Celly, and all of those refers to cellmates. Somebody who shares your cell, that tiny little space, your cellie, can also be your bunkie. Then we have cell warriors or cell soldiers, and those are inmates who are tough. They're so tough when they're locked in their cell, but face to face, they're cowards and they will not stand up for themselves. So those are the cell warriors. Happens a lot. A cook is any inmate who cooks for other inmates in exchange for valued items. Could be stamps, could be, anything else. We have a crossroader, and that's a thief that travels extensively working marks. In other words, he's a hustler. He hustles people. And he usually hustles by stealing. So that's a crossroader. And we have a dirty dog. And that's kind of a sorry, useless inmate. Now, inmates will decide who they call a dirty dog. I'm not going to even explain that. So we got doughboy. And that's D-O, doughboy. No, it's not the chubby little guy that you see on TV. This is actually somebody else's errand boy. So if an inmate has an errand boy, or they use them for protection, they use them to get drugs, they call them the doughboy. Then we have the dump truck, and that is somebody who's fat, lazy, slob. They will get called dump truck. We have fatback, and that's somebody with a large posterior. No more words needed. We have a fiend, who is a drug addict. All right, and then talking about inmates, when they arrive into prison, we got fish. And that's a new inmate who's never been in prison before. God help him. We got fresh meat, and that's when you have a batch of new inmates. We've got pumpkins, also new inmates. We got greeners, and greener is an inmate who doesn't know about prison scams or stealing. He may know about prison, but not the scams that happen in prison. So he could be new to the prison system, but he might have been in the jail system before, but he doesn't know all the underhanded stuff that occurs inside that system. We've got a foo. Okay, somebody doesn't spell it as a fool. They just skip the L altogether. And that's an inmate that acts stupidly. Funky. An inmate that doesn't shower. Guess there had to be a name for that. All right, we're moving on to high class. It's not what you think. So high class inmate is somebody who has hepatitis C. You may notice that high class HC. That's how they shorten it. Hepatitis C. Homeboy or homie. You might have heard that term even out here in the free world. So a homie is an inmate from the same neighborhood. You might have grown up with them, whichever. That's your road dog, that's your homie, that's your boy. We got hot meddlers, people who take over-the-counter medication. There's a term called in the car. And that's a prisoner who's in the know about something happening or part of the deal. So he knows something's going to happen. He's in the car and on that deal. Somebody who's institutionalized, that's a long-term inmate that accepted prison as a way of life. We talk about institutionalization a lot, and that's a topic I do want to cover, just not in this video. Then we have juvenile in training, and that's usually a younger person who's acting like a punk. He's causing trouble for the sake of causing trouble. And that's become a popular slang term in the deep south, even outside of the walls. So it's not necessarily always in prison. It's just become a popular thing. Jigger. I'd left that one, but it's a lookout for other prisoners who are breaking prison rules or committing crimes. So they're doing something over here. The jigger out there is the lookout. Jockers. And jockers are aggressive inmates who use other inmates as their prey. Because prison's a little bit of a somewhat scary world. Jody. That is a man sleeping with a prisoner's wife or girlfriend on the outside. So if you have a boyfriend out there and you have a guy sleeping with you, his name is going to be called Jody. However, another one comes up as Sancho. And that is the person that your wife or girlfriend is with on the outside. I guess it's East Coast, North Coast, East Coast more, and the others more on the South States, I'm assuming. But I've heard Jody more. I guess inmates don't like it when somebody's taking their wife or girlfriend. Who knew? Then we have a June bug. And that is a prisoner that's considered to be a slave to others. No, has nothing to do with racial slavery or otherwise. It's not a derogatory. That's just something they'll call each other. We have a lag, which is long time prisoner. And we have lame, and that's a prisoner that just doesn't know the ropes. It's not because they're new. They just don't know what's going on there. They're maybe simply doing their time and not even noticing anything. And suddenly something happens and they don't know why. So the other inmates will call them lame. And we have a lame duck. Guys, we have to add a duck to it. So lame duck is a vulnerable inmate who's going to be standing alone in that prison yard. He makes for an easy prey. So that's a lame duck. Law dog. That's usually an inmate that works in the prison library. He could be a law clerk or a paralegal. So that's your law dog. So another one way of saying that, there's legal beagles. And those are, again, inmates that assist other inmates with their necessary legal work. There's also a writ writer. That's an inmate who does legal work or assists in legal work for other inmates. So as we know, inmates are always fighting their cases, or most of them are always working on their cases or grievances or something like that. So they do have the law dogs, the legal beagles, the law people, those who know the law. I'm very familiar with one of those. Lifers, any prisoner with a life sentence. A lookout is a prisoner who will watch for the prison officials, and that's during the other inmates that are doing whatever it is to make sure he can warn them. But I think we use lookout on the free world too. Anyway, then we have monkey mouth. A monkey mouth has never been said nicely. That is a prisoner who goes on and on and on and on about nothing. Prisoners don't like it. Trust me on this one. NG. No, it's not the rap band, although it used to be. That's how the inmate refer to someone who doesn't meet their standards. It stands for no good, basically. He's a no good inmate. But instead of actually saying the words no good, they'll just go with NG. Okay, we have new booties. New booties. And that's inmates with first-time convictions. We have an OG. I think we covered the OG in their gang time, but this is the original gangster. He is that inmate who got the label of respect. So OG gets that respect given to him by older inmates that have been in the prison system. They know what it takes to survive in there. So it does not necessarily have to mean a gang affiliation. An OG is an OG. He gets that respect from the older guys, from the younger guys. The OGs are very well respected. And again, I'm familiar with one of those. Old heads are long-time inmates. They've been there for a very, very long time. They know that prison system inside out. Those are the old heads. And they usually try to take some of the newer guys under their wing too. Old school. So prisoners, prison ways from the past, when there used to be more respect. Some of the old heads will mention that in the old days, things used to be old school. There's an order of things, and things have changed. Not necessarily for the better. They'll always refer to it that, they miss the old school ways. And then there's Pepsi generation. And that, again, some of the older long-term inmates will say that the newer, younger inmates don't respect the older prisoners like they used to in the older days. Like they say, these guys are Pepsi generation. I think I said that about Britney Spears after she did the Pepsi commercial. Anyway. Then we have the prison wolf. And this is not by any means disrespectful to anybody in any way or another. I had the guys that wrote these down for me. So the prison wolf is a heterosexual, so straight prisoner, somebody who is interested in women. However, he engages in sexual activities inside prison. So kind of the gay for the state idea. So they also call him the prison wolf. We have the programmer, and that's an inmate who spends most of his time attending classes, improving himself. And sometimes he can be called the nerd of the prison. But hey, study. Do well. I'm all for it. A punk is a derogatory term for transsexual or homosexual or a weak individual. Porcelain termite. That's a prisoner who will bust up the toilet or sink, because they're connected, in the cell when he gets upset. Toilets are very important. Rabbit is an inmate who has a history of escape attempts or has plans to try to escape. Then we have rapo. Again, that's not used lightly, and that's somebody who is in there for a sex crime. Then we have real men, and that's an inmate with no tolerance at all for disrespect. And they're big enough to take it and dish it out. So usually they've been in prison for a long time. They're not going to put up with nothing at all. Like, they're the real man. We have reruns. And I think that term speaks a little bit for itself. But these are typically inmates who are released. They commit another crime and return to prison. Usually pretty much in a short while. Kind of revolving door reruns. Road dog. So if you ever picture the prison, they have that track during rec time or yard time. There's a track. So prisoners who walk the track together during rec, they become friends as much as you can be friends in prison. You are very careful who you walk the track with because you're associated with that person. They're not a good person. You're now associated with them. So anyway, that's their road dog. Another time that they refer to somebody as the road dog is when they walk around the track looking for trouble. Hey, that's my road dog. He's going to find those cigarettes. Anyway, but the road dog is somebody you trust. Somebody's on your side. That's your homie, your road dog. Kind of like your ride or die, I guess. I think that refers to women. So let's stick to road dog. We got rounder, and that's an inmate who is street smart. He knows and understands the score. That inmate is usually a pretty good hustler in prison. We have a short timer, and that's somebody who's about to be released pretty shortly. We have a snitch, and again, we use that in the free world. Inmate who informs prison officials about rule breaking by other inmates for favors. They also call him a rat or a squealer. Not something you want to be in prison. They don't take snitches lightly. We have spider monkey, and that's somebody doing hard time. And we have a sucker ducker. That's right, I said it, sucker ducker. And it's somebody who stays away from people who cause trouble. They may just want to do their time and not deal with anybody out there. All right, now we have the man. Now, who is the man in a man's prison? That is an inmate who has connections all over prison. He's usually a long-term inmate, and he knows who will find you something, who will get you something, where you find it. He's the man, and sometimes even outside of that prison. So, the man. There's Tom or George. So, you could be either Tom or George. Now, Tom is referred to as a no good inmate. George is a good guy. So can't be both. You're Tom or you're George. It's sort of like Ben and Jerry. No, that's ice cream. Anyway, I got my mind on ice cream. And then next we have Up in the Mix. So that's an inmate who's part of the prison life, one who's accustomed to being an inmate. So we see a pattern here. There's a lot of names for those that are either new or for those that are hard in the system and been there for a while. So Vic is a victim or somebody about to be a victim. Viking, somebody who's extremely lazy and unwilling to keep their living space or themselves clean. Hygiene is very, very important in prison. Very important. You do not want to break the hygiene rules. Nobody likes that. And finally, the last one I have is yoked. And that is someone who is muscular. I think I heard that in the gym. Anyway, so these are some of the names, terms, whatever you want to call it, that I've got the guys to write down what prisoners call themselves. Notice I said prisoners, not inmates, not convicts, prisoners. So if you like that kind of stuff, make sure you're subscribed because I have more of the terms coming for you, several pages more. Anyway, hope you guys had a laugh. Hope you learned something. Join me on the next one. And like I said, give this a thumbs up because this was fun to do. Bye.